We'll start with the 49ers won the game. Let's put that out there. But we're going to have to start with this Trey Lance situation because I think that's kind of the big story. It even overrides what they did on the field because this is sort of it's QB1 and all the things they were going to be able to do. So let's start here with Trey and Rod. We're both big Trey guys. We know there's a high ceiling for him, and maybe the floor was possibly a little lower than we thought. But heading into game 2 at home, Seattle's a really good opponent for him to kind of get his feet wet. And in the first quarter, he basically fractures his ankle. His foot was sticking the wrong way for sure on what was, I think there was a couple of options on that play, and he decided to take it up the middle and run. And this is what happened last week. It's what we were kind of worried about, him running into linemen and linebackers and getting hurt. And that's what happened. Sort of our worst nightmare became a reality. What is your thought on what happened and how it happened?
Well, I've got lots of thoughts. Um, I actually was behind watching the game, and fortunately, I had it recorded. So, I've been trying to track, to try to just keep up with what's going on in the game, but got sidetracked on a lot of conversations on Facebook about this situation. And I'm going to start with an analogy that I think is very apt here. I buy a BMW,
Mm-hmm.
and you ask me, what are you going to do with that BMW? I'm going to go drive it on the Autobahn. Rod, it's too dangerous to go drive on the Autobahn. But guess what? That is what I bought this car for, is to do that.
Right.
You don't draft a quarterback like Trey Lance or Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson or Kyler Murray. And then, as the fans on Facebook are saying, don't run the ball. I mean, as I saw in camp, when you were putting in quarterback power, or the quarterback um, running package, quarterback power was a big part of it. In between the tackles, there was some option, there was some RPO, but it was clear that quarterback power was going to be a big part of the offense. It comes down to, I see it as a philosophical thing. Some people are just risk averse. They don't want, it again, people say it's risky. I would argue that there's no empirical data or even anecdotal data that a quarterback is safer inside the pocket than he is outside the pocket. I would argue that particular injury could just as easily you can get rolled up, in the pocket. Um, you can make the argument that being outside the pocket makes you, it's possible that you take more hits, and that we could argue that another time. The overarching thing, the overarching feeling I have is it's a feeling of kind of mourning. Not necessarily mourning Trey, which it sucks for him that he's hurt and probably, yet another season, um, with just whatever, however many snaps he had this season. But more so mourning what I felt could have been and saw the beginnings of. I don't see how anybody could argue the fact that the offense is just more dynamic with him in there, and it affected the way the defense had to approach the offense with just the threat of him. And we really hadn't saw the deep game, unfold. But even his critics had to acknowledge that that was probably the strongest part of his game. So it's a mourning of those things not being coming to fruition. Stink said on the broadcast, you could basically just throw that stuff out of the playbook now. So what we're left with is what we had before. And again, I'm not a Jimmy hater. I really am not. It's just that the ceiling is so low with him, and it just feels the offense has always just felt kind of like a slog. Like, you have to fight for every damn thing. There's just not there's n- you know he's not going to give us any explosive plays. You can just forget that. It's just
Well, I
it's
mean, we saw the second half,
yeah.
which is what happens all the time in the second half. Okay, let me
Okay, yeah,
let
I'm
me
sorry.
let me.
I went
No, no,
on
no,
a bit too
no, you're
much.
fine. But I want to take something that you said. You compared uh Trey to Josh Allen to Kyler Murray. You said Lamar Jackson. I think Josh Allen in week 1, he had 5 runs, and I don't know how many of those runs were him making something out of nothing.
Mhm.
Kyler last week, same thing, 5 runs. Trey had 3 runs already by the time he got hurt. I don't have a problem with him using his legs and then them using him as a weapon. It
Mhm.
just seemed like it was way too often, especially early in the ballgame, because when if he is as fresh of an athlete as he seems, young legs, third and fourth quarter, when the defense is tired a little bit, then you're like, okay, like he can, he's gonna surprise somebody and he's got fresh legs and he can break something. But so early in the game, when the other parts of the running game were working, now I will caveat this by saying the reason why some of those parts in the running game were working is because of the threat of him running as well. So that all kind of coexists and works together. But they have such a creative running game with him as the quarterback because they can run different things, and the defense has to kind of wait one Mississippi before they just break because they don't know what's going to happen. All
Exactly.
of that stuff is pro him being QB. I just don't know if I wanted to see him run so often and be that being such a major part of what they were doing, because just the threat of him seemed to be enough to offset the defense. Wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Well, so much of there's always a lot of criticism of it's not just Kyle, any play caller at all levels. I've seen it. The play caller, whatever he call, if it doesn't work, it it's I even mentioned that you saw that last week with Nathaniel Hackett. He's a damn head coach, and he's like, well, it was a bad call because it didn't work. Well,
Yeah.
that frustrates me so when people get so result oriented as opposed to process oriented.
Mhm.
There are definitely, I believe, criticism. You can criticize Kyle. One thing I find fault with is that sometimes it seems like he is outsmarting himself. It's
Yeah,
like he's in his head and he's calling plays and he's calling counter plays to the play that he just called, and he's calling counters to the counter to a play that it kind of can get. And I understand when you're on a play sheet like that, you can start playing games like that. So to answer your question, I don't know what he's seeing in the defense that makes him want to call that quarterback power so often, so early. I don't know if there's a read that he's getting from the defense that he feels like he's got something that he can exploit there, or is he calling it because he is thinking plays down the road where if that calling this here sets this up
sure.
later. I mean, I just don't know. That was something that people talked about, with all our play calls. Walsh, they talked about the 15 plays on the script. Well, he would, he in his book he talks about, basically he doesn't call them throwaway plays, but essentially throwaway. He's running this play, not that he's necessarily thinking that he's going to, hit it for something big, but that this play sets up something else that he has in his back pocket
Yes,
on
yes.
down the road. So if he shows the defense X, now they're looking for this, and
Yeah,
now
it's
I
chess.
know, yeah, and that I know that I'll be able to run Y or Z on down the road because they are scheming for this play. So I don't know that, but I, we've talked about in the group, or at least I have, the thought of maybe Debo kind of being on a pitch count. Maybe he's,
Mhm, mhm.
and that probably wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for your quarterback. You want him involved, but you probably want him involved in as limited a basis as possible.
Right.
I don't know. Well, that's all for not now because
Yeah.
the quarterback run package is scrapped. But yeah, it's just unfortunate on so many fronts. But the conversation I think is germane because Trey's not going anywhere. So this is a conversation that clearly is you know tabled until next season. But the notion of how he is deployed is something that for as long as he is a quarterback in this offense is going to be something that is something that's going to be debated.
Yeah, so I think the it's not even really a counter to the Kyle stuff, but he looks at it very much the way that you just said it, because right after the game was over, they asked him, about that play, and he said, "Yeah, look, there's an option there. Like Kyle, Trey doesn't have to run it. Like Trey has a couple different things to do." But he also said, "It's a football play. We would run it again." And obviously, he wishes he could take it back because the player got hurt, but that is just in their playbook and it's in their package for Trey to run that play. So he doesn't, he doesn't believe that this was any fluky play call or that they were overly relying on him to run the football. So it sort of backs up what you said, and he was a little defensive. So somebody said, it's 2nd and 8, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, well, what does it matter if it's 2nd and 8 or 2nd and 4? And he said they had just run that same play 3 plays earlier when Debo went 50 some odd yards.
Right.
So he's going to be second guessed. It's his job, to get second guessed. That he's a professional football coach
Yeah.
of a big time team, and it's football. NFL is the biggest TV show going.
Yeah.
It's more popular than ever. So I do think the season as it's going on now, I think there's going to be a little bit of national narrative surrounding all of the people who want to pump their fists because they think Jimmy G's the better player anyways. And we've already started to see that come out even with fans. Like there was I think going back to what you said really early on, which is people hate risk. And when Jimmy is there, I think people feel a little bit more calm because they can predict what's going to happen because we've seen it. And we haven't seen it with Trey. So we don't know if Trey's going to throw 3 picks or we don't know if Trey's going to hit a couple of 60-yard plays, right? So those who are comfortable with Jimmy, it's because they know, okay, I know what Jimmy's going to do. And I sat there in the second half and I was just shaking my head because I was like, okay, that Jimmy came in and he did the good Jimmy stuff for those first 2 drives. I know bad Jimmy is coming. I just hope that bad Jimmy doesn't kill us. And thankfully it didn't kill us because the Seattle's not good enough right now
Right.
for it to kill us. But bad Jimmy was there. He did not have a good second half. And part of the reason why they couldn't run the football is because once they saw Jimmy under center, they're like, "Oh, run play. We know what's
Yeah.
coming." And
Hmm.
then they see Jimmy in shotgun and they go, "Oh, pass play. We know what's coming." So that is another part of this. I think Kyle has his work cut out for him to kind of go backward a little bit in the offense because he now has to build the game plan around a completely different quarterback. And let's not take for granted the fact that I think they really expected Ayuk to explode. And Ayuk is now more of a possession receiver with Jimmy there. Danny Gray, who is Danny Gray without a quarterback who can actually throw the ball down the field? So,
Who
we
will
may
even attempt to throw the ball down the
right,
field?
yeah, yeah. So there's a lot of things that that Shanahan's going to have to fix, and they 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 built an offense designed to take advantage of Trey's strengths, and now you kind of have to go a little bit backward in what you want to do